Hello, everyone, and welcome to Theory into Practice. This is Daniel Scott. Today, I'm actually very excited to talk to the guest today. There's a lot going on, and we have some kind of some exciting news on things that are happening and being brought forward, and then ultimately just have the conversation from someone with the experience level that he has. So I'd like to introduce our guest, former FEMA administrator, Mr. Pete Gaynor. How are you doing this morning, sir?
Good, Dan. Thanks. Good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Well, thank you for taking the time. I know that you get busier and busier every time we talk, so I appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this discussion and spend some time with me this morning and let
Sure.
the listeners get to kind of hear what you're doing. So let's talk about that. One of the things I definitely want to shine some light on is that you have a new course that you've put out there. The course itself is uh, uh, about leadership and leading during crisis. The name of the course is Leading During Crisis. So let's talk about that. If you tell everybody what it is and what they could gain from taking the course.
Yeah. So thanks. Just a little background on the course. When I left FEMA and federal service, it took me about a year to kind of really think about what had just happened. It was a you know COVID and the busiest hurricane and wildfire season on record, all mixed into one. There's lots going on there. I had a unique opportunity to be in a senior leadership role during really a national crisis. And during that year, I really thought about, are there some lessons that I could, did I personally learn any lessons, right? It's kind of a self-reflection. And then, if I did, and I did, how could I share those back out? And so the course really started out as me doing it in person, right? So I wanted to do, small groups, 20, 40 people together, and kind of share my insights about what I thought were important aspects of leading during a crisis. And I did many of those with these small groups, some universities, business, and a couple other entities. And along the way, people asked me, individuals, can I take the course? And I said, well, I don't do individuals, I just do groups. And so if you become part of a group, then obviously we can do it. But more and more people ask me to do individual, and I realized that, well, maybe I'm missing out on another opportunity. And so I decided to create an online course based on my original in-person course, which I still deliver, called Leading During Crisis. And so uh, it's a on-demand online course that you can purchase and you can do at your own pace and still get I think the essence of what I teach in person. So that's kind of where it is, and you can find that course at my website femapete.com. So that's kind of the synopsis of that course and how I got here.
Awesome, and I'll make sure to put that link in the show description as well, and share that out when I share the show. So for everybody's listening, if you're driving down the road, you'll be able to find that link. Also, very important note on that the course itself. There's CEUs attached to it. So not only do you get to hear from Pete and hear his experience and ultimately the leadership that he brings, you get some continuing education units on top of that course, and that's especially in emergency management space, that is huge, especially if you have a certification of some sort. So that overall, I feel that that's extremely valuable to the audience, and learning from someone that's been at the stage you've been at, but also working with the level of people that you've worked with, and that's one of the areas that I feel in leadership, sometimes we see it as it's more about a popularity contest versus actual capabilities. So through your time working in leadership and now teaching leadership and working across the world really with what you've been doing the last few years, what aspects of leadership really can you apply to what you're doing right now?
Well, I've had the opportunity to uh, be emergency management director at the local level. So I work for two two Democrat mayors. Not that that matters, but I think in context it matters to this conversation. So two Democrat mayors in the city of Providence. It's really where I kind of crafted my emergency management professional skill set. Previous to that, I was in the Marine Corps for 26 years, and so I mean I had some leadership skills that were drilled into me. And then I had the opportunity to work for the governor of the state of Rhode Island at the time, Gina Raimondo. She is now the Commerce Secretary, but a Democrat governor. Again, not that it matters, but again, in context, it will. And then asked to come to work for FEMA with Brock Long, who was administrator at the time, and originally asked to come to be the deputy FEMA administrator, working for a Republican president. And so I think that, like, one of the leadership things that I've learned is, yeah, all politics or all disasters have politics aspects to them. You can't take that out of it. And as the administrator and as director at the state local level, I was a political appointee, right? So I can be hired on one day and fired on the next day, and that's just the way it works. But one of the leadership aspects about this is not to get, as a emergency management public safety official, right? Doesn't matter whether you're working for a Republican or a Democrat. For me, it's all the same. Is stay out of pure politics. Even though technically you're a political appointee, you got to do your best to stay out of the pure politics of any elected leader's orbit. And so I made it a habit, not to attend, fundraisers, not to contribute to, my boss, no signs on the front lawn. And, if somebody asks you a political question in a news conference or, in some other public venue, I deferred to, the boss or somebody else that, politics was their game. And the lesson is, if you mix pure politics with a disaster, you're going to end up losing. And so I guess the leadership lesson here is, no matter the party, no matter the boss, you have an obligation to the mission and to the Constitution and to the laws of whether it's a local or a state to deliver disaster assistance to those most in need, those disaster survivors. And if you start picking sides, you'll lose and you'll be publicly punished for it. So if you're out there as a political appointee and you want to get into politics, I believe that you probably end up paying the price.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I actually just had a conversation yesterday when I was talking about sometimes I think that those in the position of, especially as emergency managers, they may not be in a position of leadership, but the overall concept there is that you're leading, up, down, sideways, wherever it may be. But we have a moral obligation to serve the community, despite our political opinions or beliefs or whatever may be happening at the time politically. We're actually entering that time again, so it's like we have, our goal is not to sway one way or the other, to voice one way or the other. It's to serve the community in which we're supposed to represent and keep safe. And that's what, ultimately true leadership is in the face of that is continue to move forward and stay on the mission, as you mentioned. How does that, for me, one of the things that I'm trying to do with what I'm doing with Theory into Practice and with other ventures is that my goal is to help drive the profession and in the same form, the professional that's in the profession. So moving forward towards the future, I feel like individuals like yourself, especially coming from the level you did and the experience that you had and the work that you do, we can help shape the professional who works in the profession. How do we do that? How do we reshape emergency management? I feel like emergency management, whether it's lost its course or is never really had a course, we need to really define that now. I feel like we need to really define the future and how it looks, and when it comes to standardization and ethics and the credentialing and all that stuff that goes along with a true profession. How can we, with the leadership aspect of things, apply that leadership in a way that it influences and actually creates that change that's needed moving forward.
Yeah. So I don't disagree with anything that you say. And however, I think we need to like put who we are in context as a profession. And when you think about our sister public safety partners like police and fire, police and fire have been doing their business for centuries, and have had a lot of time to learn lessons, become more professional, establish standards. Right, you can't be a police officer without having a certain amount of credits that are nationally accepted. And again, accreditation for both police and fire is kind of the standard practice. And when you think about emergency management, our history is pretty short. I'm sure some historian could trace it back, 1,000 years maybe if you tried real hard. But I think the modern profession of emergency management is, probably, 50, 60, 70 years old. And I still consider it it's still immature in its growth. Not that we're immature as emergency managers, that just the profession is generally is still growing and still learning. So there's a lot to be done. And one of my beliefs, and maybe drilled into me in the Marine Corps, was you have an obligation to leave it better than you found it. And so, no matter what role you serve, whether you're a local director or just a planner in an emergency management agency, no matter if you're a leader by title or just one of the troops, you have an obligation to leave it better than you found it. And I think that in itself, that kind of belief, that rule, if you do that, then I think over time you just chip away at becoming more mature, more professional, and get to the levels of our sister public safety agency. So there's lots to do. There's lots of things we do wrong. There's lots of room for growth, and we still have some learning to do.
Yeah, I kind of equate, and when I talk about this subject specifically, I kind of equate it to if you're a Star Wars fan, Baby Yoda, right? Baby Yoda is 50 years old, but still a tiny infant, But there's still so much I feel like we need to start getting into toddlerhood at this point. We need to start falling down a little bit more. We need to start learning, making some stuff happen. But one of the areas that I feel, especially as trying to build a future in emergency management, and as we find a lot of those who fall into emergency management, and it's changing because there's educational now, people are aspiring to be emergency managers versus falling into it, but they all come from the response side of things. And when it comes to emergency management, I feel like we need to be more on the proactive, not the reactive side of things. And I feel like even fire and PD and EMS, which would be more proactive versus the reactive. Mostly we're waiting for the call, right? We're waiting for the call to say someone needs help, and then we go get that help as a responder. As an emergency manager, I feel like we need to be very proactive. And I think leadership in emergency management have that strict, they're very linked, because leadership is very proactive. It's not, you don't wait for people to come to you and say they need help. You go and you say, I can help, right? So I think with the history of emergency management, it's been reactive and response oriented. And my hope is that we would switch from the proactive, or from the reactive approach to the proactive approach. When it comes to leading the future, how do we really start to implement that and really grind that into the everyday hustle of emergency management?
Yeah, no, it's true. So everyone loves to respond, right? It's kind of the adrenaline high, saving lives, protecting property, being in the moment. And it's all important stuff, and it's all important stuff that emergency managers do and must continue to do. But when you look at the spectrum of all that we do, right? Response is probably the shortest, aspect, the shortest time frame of our responsibilities. When you look at everything else, mitigation and preparedness, and probably the thing that most people are uncomfortable with is recovery. And recovery has the longest legs, and probably has the greatest. And I'm not saying response and saving lives doesn't have value, but I'm saying it probably has the greatest value over time, where you have the ability to rebuild communities that have just suffered from disaster, make them stronger, make them more resilient, make them ready for the next disaster. I mean, to me, that maybe outweighs the focus on response. And again, I'm not saying response is not important. I'm just saying we need to focus more on the recovery side of what we do, because again, that's where the greatest value lies, is in that full and complete recovery. So we have to kind of change that mindset. And I tell the story where I was giving a keynote in Savannah for IEM a couple of years ago, and I had this pitch that I did on the road, and one of the things in my thing was, it's like the 5 things I wish I did differently as an emergency management director, as a local and a state director. Now that I'm the FEMA administrator or the deputy administrator, I wish I had done it a little bit different, because I see things a little bit differently now. And one of them was, I wish I paid more attention to mitigation. Right, mitigation is, again, one of those long lead kinds of things, and it's not completely satisfying in the moment, because it takes years sometimes, and a lot of effort and a lot of focus. But I wish I had done more mitigation. So there were about 1,500 people in the audience, and I said, "Hey, everyone sitting here, how many mitigators are out there?" And like 12 mitigators raised their hand out of 1,500. And by the way, they're all sitting at the same table, so all the mitigators found each other out of the 1,500. And I was really surprised by that. And maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was really surprised by that response. Is that, like, the minor element of that 1,500 thought of themselves as mitigators. But if I had asked the question of the 1,500 in the room, how many of you think you're first responders or responders, right? Everyone would have raised their hand. And so, we got to change that outlook, that culture a little bit, to, not so much focus full time on response, but focus more importantly on things like mitigation and recovery, and other things that are not as sexy, not as thrilling, not as filled with adrenaline, but that is the job of an emergency manager, right? It's the entire spectrum of emergency management, not just the first phase recovery. I'm sorry, response.
Yeah, that is kind of like, well, it's not, and that's exactly what I'm trying to change, or at least the message I'm trying to bring is that, response is, everybody sees it. They hear it, they see it, it's right in front of you. Versus, the prevention, the mitigation, the recovery aspects, it's more on the back end. You don't really necessarily see it. So that's one of the message I'm trying to bring with trying to create a switch in mindset of the proactivity, but also creating that sense of, we need to become marketers of what we do. Like, we have to be telling people what we're doing, why we're doing it, how it's important, how they get involved. And we need to be we need to be right in front, and we need to be heard. Like, we don't need to be fading into the background, sitting in our office, putting up, we need to be out publicly. And I feel like the more public we are, the more people know what we're doing, the more we shine light on that, the more people see how it values the community, them individually. And then we not only that, when it comes to, like, policy and budget cuts, and you're going to be so visible that they're not going to dare touch you. Right? They're going to say, they're doing so much with the community. They're working so much on the back end. They got so much trust built up in the community. It would be ridiculous, So I feel like we need to do more.
That's the challenge of growth, right? And you can go back to, in my first job in emergency management in the city of Providence, that agency started out as a civil defense agency, and their first office, because they took me, they had only recently left the office, but they took me to go visit it after I took over. Was in the basement of a school on the outskirts of town, right? And really horrible conditions. But that was kind of like the culture, right? Civil defense in the basement. We call you when you need you, and that is a hard culture to break away from. I think we've been fast forwarded through COVID and some other challenges, right? We're not in the basement anymore. We're not the backroom guys and gals. We're the agencies and programs that people call when when the traditional way of managing something falls apart. But I think there's still a little bit of like second-class citizen kind of belief about emergency managers, and I challenge anyone to get rid of that mentality, because you can see, especially in the last, especially since COVID, but even leading up to COVID, communities, the federal government, states have asked emergency managers to do more and more and more and more, and not traditional stuff, things that are not traditional. Afghan resettlement, Ebola, COVID, you name it, right? Emergency managers, homelessness, asked to do more and more and more that are really outside the traditional skill set, and have taken a front seat role. And I think if I could make a suggestion to those out there in there, you gotta, if you're out front, you gotta act like you can lead from the front, right? Don't fade into the background. I think, to your point, if no one knows what you're doing, they don't know why you're doing it, you don't take credit for it publicly, I think it's harder to justify your program. It's harder to get funding. It's harder to hire people. It's harder to retain people, right? So you got to be bold about what you're doing and let people know how critical the role of emergency managers are across the country.
And I agree. And I mean, it's not about ego. It's not about, hey, look at me, look at me. It's
No,
about
no.
look at what we're doing and why this is important. It's not to say, I mean, I feel like, I mean, I go back to that. We have a moral obligation to do our job well. People's lives, their livelihoods, their properties, their communities, they all can rise and fall or be greatly affected on decisions that we make or don't make. And whether or not we're saying, hey, look, I just made this decision, is to look at the work that we're doing, look at the effort that we're putting in, look at the programs we're initiating, but look at the systems we're putting in place. And the more you do that, the more you get that not only that just that buy-in, but also that engagement. That engagement is what we're looking for, right? I told people, I was talking to people yesterday, and I told them, like, most messaging that we put out, it's not just messaging to say, hey, look at this. It's actually a message that with a call to action to it. Like, we're telling them, look at this thing, do this to help you, right? And we want to get that engagement, that action, that them to take action. I think that comes from the leadership aspect thing. That's why I think your course is going to be so great for those who take it, especially after those 5 CEUs attached to it, and then the experience that comes through it. And I was looking at it. You have 2 different options for the course to you actually get to choose from, but it's how many hours you say was it? It's 5 units with 20 plus hours of content.
It's probably pretty close to that. Yeah, so you can do it online. There's a couple of versions you can purchase. You can and so for me, it's all about time to doing the in-person one. But I do a 3-hour version of this in person. And recently, I've because this is all kind of new to me, I've sold the courses in bulk. And then I'm going to do some kind of a modified in-person course for people who have taken the course prior to me getting there. And then we'll discuss the course a little bit. And then, based on the need of this entity who wants to talk to me in person, we're going to have a modified version of the course. And so you can get it kind of 3 ways now, right? You can get online, you can get me in person, and then you can kind of have a hybrid version of it where you can at a discount, you can buy a block of them, and then we'll figure out a time where I can show up and we can have an in-person conversation.
Have you thought about doing them live but virtually as well?
Uh, I haven't. Um, it's if again for me, it's just about how much time I have to do all this, because I'm not only am I doing this, I have a full-time job working for Hill, and I'm on the board of a couple other companies, and a couple other things. So for me, the challenge is not my eagerness to do it. It's my difficulty in finding enough time to do it all.
Yeah, time management, doing it all, that's always an issue. I understand
Yeah,
that 100%.
yeah,
If I can help you in that way, please let me know
yeah, yeah. No,
on that
it's a
note.
good
Yeah.
idea. It's a good idea.
I would love to be able to help with that. Well, you know what? We're coming up on our time, and I just wanted to say thank you for spending some time with us. I know your time is literally your most important resource, and I appreciate you giving it to me. I want to really push and let everybody know that this course is amazing on leadership, to be able to learn from Pete, to hear his stories and the leadership that he's been actually put into real life leadership that he's actually utilized over the last years, especially through at the level he's put it in there, and the fact that you can own it. I mean, you buy the course, you get to watch them at your own leisure. You get the CEUs, you get to keep those and go back to them. So I
Yeah.
think that's amazing. So Pete, I want to thank you for that.
Yep.
And
And
also,
Dan, I think we gave your listeners like a 10% discount if they go through you, right? So you can actually get a discount on the course. So
oh, perfect. Yeah.
so
So I did.
trying
Yeah,
to
I
plug
almost forgot to
plug
mention
you a
that.
little bit. Go through Dan to get the course. You get it. You'll save a few bucks.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. I just forget that. So I'll put that in the notes as well. There's a discount code that Pete's offering for the course. So that's amazing. Thank you for that, Pete. Very generous
You're
of you.
welcome.
I want to just give you a minute to say the last words on basically how the listeners can implement emergency management and leadership in their day to day.
Yeah, so I would just say that maybe it's something that I have done as a individual, is like for every opportunity, I look for every opportunity to make myself a little bit smarter, a little bit stronger, a little bit more skilled, to find some additional tools that would help me in my job as emergency manager. And so whatever that search leads you to, right? And I'm not talking about my course only. There's a lots of other great content and courses and opportunities out there, both online and in person. If you have the opportunity to put another arrow in your quiver to make you stronger, take that opportunity, right? Because my belief is, and I just use myself as the example, someday someone's going to ask you to do something really tough. And you're going to wish that you had made a greater investment in yourself over time, because on the day they ask you to do it, it's all you. It's everyone's looking at you. There's going to be no time to go back and take a course, or to look at your notes. As a tip, uh, try to strengthen your skill sets every day, because someday you will need them.
I'm so happy you said that. That's actually an area that I've been studying, and it goes all the way back to ancient times to right now. The greatest thinkers in our time, from Plato to Socrates to today's thinkers of Warren Buffett. The greatest investment you can make is in yourself, your
Yeah,
self-education.
yeah,
And so if you're not continually investing in yourself, and this course would be a great investment, other courses would be a great investment,
yeah,
leadership programs, schooling, you're not growing. And personal growth is, if you're not working on yourself every day, you're ultimately your only person you're ultimately messing with is you and your
yeah,
future decisions. And so that's amazing. I'm so glad you said that. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate your
Yeah,
time today.
absolutely. I'm so
Great
glad. Thank
discussion.
you. For all those who are out there listening to this, I will be putting this out, and all the stuff we talked about will be in the show notes. Pete did offer a discount for the course. So if you go to the course and you put Dan10 inside the discount code, you'll get 10% off. So either course that you purchase, or either version. And I'll put that in there as well, so you'll have that. Thank you so much, Pete, again for the time. Thank you so much for what you do for the profession. It's always great talking with you. It's always great learning from you, and I look forward to being able to do so as we move forward.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.